Halifax Wanderers coming off a clean sheet victory in week one. We will recap last week's match and, of course, look forward to this upcoming weekend's match against Inter Toronto. Welcome to Halifax Sports Talk. I am Andrew McInnis, and I've got Josh Healey, publisher of Halifax Football Post, with me, and you can find him on all kinds of other spots as well, including One Soccer, including The Athletic. We've seen him all over the place, and we're very grateful to have Josh with us every single Thursday live. So if you guys want your thoughts heard, your questions heard, make sure you tune in throughout the next upcoming weeks, and you will take your questions as well. But let's bring him in. Josh, look, some people want high-scoring matches, and I get it, but you got to be impressed with a 1-0 victory, a clean sheet, and an undefeated start to the Sartini era. How are you, Josh?
Thanks for having me, Andrew. I'm great. Yeah, you alluded to it right there. He's undefeated so far in the start of his Wanderers era, which is great. But I think this particular match might be a case of, they don't ask how, they ask how many. So they may have escaped Vancouver with the 1-0 victory, but it was anything but a sure thing when you kind of delve a little deeper into the match.
So happy to be doing these every Thursday, and that's the day we decided, because a lot of people like to look forward more than looking back. But because we're going to be here once a week together, we'll start off the shows by taking a look back. And then, of course, we'll close it out with looking forward to the next upcoming matches. So we just teased it, and I love the soundbite you had with your question with Sartini there with the post game, getting a good laugh out of him. That seemed like it kind of made its rounds across social media. He's like, I might resign. I'm good to go. I'm undefeated. And you love to see that, and some comedy and some good vibes there from the coach. But based on what you said to us last week on the show about what we expected to see, we're only one match in. But what did you see of this new and improved Halifax Wanderers club?
Yeah, well, it's to be determined, honestly. What we were able to see versus Vancouver was a side that's very strong defensive. They've got their principles set, they've got their structure set, but they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do in the final third. Just looking at their XG for that match, it was around 0.5. You're going to have to generate and create a little bit more to be able to win matches in the Canadian Premier League. So that's what they've been working on in training this week, and I expect them to kind of develop that offensive chemistry as the season goes along.
And when you look at the goal that was scored, we have to talk about this. I mean, it sounds so cliche, Josh, but you hear this across every single sport. But realistically, this could be a goal of the year nominee, and it was the first match of the season for the Halifax Wanderers. Lorenzo Callegari, we know what he's capable of, but Wanderers fans have to be excited for seeing that in the first match of the season.
100%. You hit the nail right on the head there, Andrew. Lorenzo Callegari is a player who's known for his passing the ball, not so much as shooting the ball. That was actually only his second goal in a Wanderers uniform. So to see him be able to hit that knuckleball, go right over the wall and have it pop into the corner there, it was a wonder goal. The XG for that was 0.05, I believe. So the odds were quite long. But that moment of individual brilliance is ultimately what propelled the Wanderers to victory and an important 3 points on the road, which, up until that point, you couldn't really say they deserved. They had played in a good match defensively, but there's just a disconnect on the offense. So they end up leaning on the former Paris Saint-Germain academy player to kind of get them over the line and again, head back to the East Coast with 3 points in hand.
As you mentioned, known for his passing, keeping that calm presence and making the right decisions always. But sometimes, Josh, it is nice to just see a highlight goal like that. And as you mentioned, you could have been having a good game, you could have been having a bad game, but plays like that separate a team. And sometimes those are goals you look for at the end of the season when you really need a win or you really need a result or a playoff match. But how crucial is that for the team to see a goal like that this early in the season?
Yeah, seasons are made of moments, and that's a moment that you maybe look back on and go, okay, this is a spot where they could have maybe failed, or in years past, conceded a goal and ended up leaving or not gotten the ball over the line when it mattered. So to see them start off with a win, again, propelled by a bit of individual exceptionalism, is good. And it's kind of a break from the variance that we've seen from Wanderers clubs in the past. This season and really Sartini's tenure as the head coach of the club is about shaking off the reputation of being a club that chokes in big moments. Again, that's still just the first match of the season, but for Callegari to be able to step up and hit that ball like he did, and for the Wanderers to be able to hold on and get that clean sheet, maybe shows the start of a shift of a mentality that Vanni Sartini has brought.
And we hope that can continue. We have a couple other topics to get to, of course, but let's talk about Marco Carducci, because when you talk about a great win and a clean sheet, we cannot just talk about the brilliance of the goal-scoring capability of Lorenzo Callegari. What did you see in goal there? And we've talked about this leadership and the presence, in goal we're going to see from him. But how great was it for him to get off to that great start?
Yeah, it was imperative. It's one of those things that Marco Carducci is a known quantity in the CPL in a lot of ways. Of course, he's a two-time Golden Glove winner. He's won multiple trophies when he was with Cavalry FC. So, there was already pretty high expectations. But I think Wanderers fans will be really happy to have seen how calm and collected he was at the back. And he stood tall. He ended up making 5 saves over the course of the match, mostly when Vancouver had the run of play. And was rightly named CPL Player of the Week. I think that was actually just announced today. In terms of his leadership, I asked Vanni Sartini about Carducci post-match, and he spoke about Carducci is probably one of the top 3 leaders that Sartini has ever had in any locker room, which is saying something given his pedigree in all the different clubs and associations he's been involved in across Europe and North America. So that bodes very well that the Wanderers were able to add him as a piece. And then just kind of looking ahead a little bit, there is a lot of youth on the club as well. There's a bunch of Wanderers who made their debuts this past weekend. So to have a veteran player like Carducci who can kind of maybe steady that back line, again, which has a lot of young players, I think it's just going to pay dividends over the long term as they navigate their season and figure out where they kind of sit on the CPL table.
Well, some high praise from a coach that has a big resume. So that's got to feel good for Marco, and it's got to feel good for Wanderers fans to hear that they have such confidence in the goalkeeper that they picked up, of course, in the offseason. Josh Healey at JRJ Healey, of course, publisher HFX Football Post. And guys, we are live here roughly around the same time every single Thursday, taking a look back and, of course, getting ready to look forward to some games as well. Josh, it's always fun to talk about the great things that took place, the positives. And when I do shows, I love to keep it positive. But you know how fans are. I know you've seen that fan group. What did you see that you'd like to have improved? Were there some troubles, some issues in certain categories of the game that you would have liked to see improved?
Of course. I think it's one of those things where there are a couple growing pains with the club. Again, anytime you only retain 10 players and bring all these new faces and personalities in, it's going to take a little bit of time for everybody to settle. I think the 2 biggest things that people are going to look for to kind of improve or that can be worked on, the first one is going to be the offense, specifically around the strikers. We saw Cyprien Cachwale and Jason Bahambula start and lead the front line versus Vancouver. And looking at sort of their play throughout the match, they weren't very involved in a lot of instances. They were looking, or the midfielders were looking to hit them with long balls to really stretch the opposition, and they weren't able to really connect. For the most part, the Halifax strikers were playing on an island. So I expect to see one of those front 2 attackers to drop a little deeper and kind of play a bit more of a false 9 role to link up with the midfield and create a little bit more flow. Again, we know that Sartini likes to run a striker partnership, but the way things kind of looked in the first match, that they weren't impactful enough to help win football matches. I think between them, there was only 3 touches in Vancouver FC's box over the course of the match, which again is not enough to create sustained opportunity.
Well, I remember last week, Dayton asked you the benefits of potentially starting off the season on the road. And I talked to good friend Christian Oxner, of course, former goalkeeper for the Wanderers. And I asked him, hey, would you rather start the season off with a couple games at home or a couple games on the road? And he said, you know what? If it meant that towards the end of the season we had more home games, if we're going to start the season off on the road, I'll start on the road all day long. And I think that when you look at this team, what you just spoke about, hey, you come out with the 1-0 victory, but if you take a look at some things that need improving and you're going to tell me it's some offensive finishing, hey, they can clean that up on the road. And then by the time we get to watch the home opener, then they have that all figured out, because the fans, they like to see goals. They're happy to get the wins, but I'm sure it's not a bad thing to start on the road. You get 2 matches and then come on home to the home crowd.
There's definitely a bonding aspect to starting on the road, right? I mean, you hear about it in all sports, whether it be hockey, whether it be in football. There's, especially when there's a lot of turnover, it's a chance for the guys to bond. They're, traveling together, they're at hotels together. Whereas when you're playing at home, you're waking up in your own bed and you're meeting at the pitch, or you're meeting at the office, in the Wanderers case, downtown ahead of the match for your pre-game meeting, and then walking over. So there are some good things about starting on the road. Obviously, for us here on the East Coast, part of that has to do with the weather and playing on a grass pitch. The Wanderers grounds just isn't ready at the very beginning of April, so it takes a little bit to get the grounds looking good and get the grass right. But it won't be too long until we see both the Wanderers and the Halifax Tides getting ready to kick off in downtown.
Yes, we cannot forget about the Halifax Tides. We'll be covering them as well, and I can't wait for that to get going. Some great games and some great atmospheres at those games as well. Guys, if you're enjoying the video, please hit the like button on YouTube and subscribe to our channel, Halifax Sports Talk. We cover the Halifax Mooseheads, the Halifax Thunderbirds, of course, the Wanderers, Tides. We're trying to do it all here, hence the name, Halifax Sports Talk. All right, a few more minutes here, Josh. Going to keep picking your brain before we get set for the upcoming match. Let's talk about some of the fresh faces. You kind of helped us out, get to know what a few of these players are going to bring to the roster, but just update us a little bit on maybe expectations, how these players are going to be used, and some of the fresh faces and debuts as Halifax Wanderers.
Yeah, as was alluded to earlier, there were a lot of debuts this past weekend for the Halifax Wanderers. Maybe one of the surprise debuts was in Francesco Troisi, who is a former Vancouver Whitecap and actually started as one of the wingback roles versus Vancouver. So for me and some other people as well, I think it was a bit of a surprise to see him on the starting 11. Of course, he's a young player, only 18. But he put in a decent shift and representation of himself. On the opposite wing back, there was also Marcus Godinho, who's more of a veteran. He had his hands full with some of Vancouver FC's defenders this past weekend, but look to him to be a consistent starter for the Wanderers. But probably the biggest outfield player who I kind of noticed was Lucas Algin, who's a former Toronto FC player. He was kind of rotating in and out from the number 6 or the defensive midfielder position with Lorenzo Callegari. And I thought he showed a lot of promise. He ended up again starting and playing a lot of important minutes. He's still trying to find his spot or his path a little bit, in so much as there are a few times in his movement where him and Callegari were trying to collect the ball at the same time, because they're both used to being more defensive players. There was also a pass in the first half as well where Algin had actually kind of broken through and had a couple of different targets and ended up misplaying the ball and putting it right into the pads of a Vancouver FC player. So some promising starts, and it'll be interesting to see who starts this upcoming weekend versus Inter Toronto, given they'll be back on the road.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how much there is of a change up, right? Because you want that continuity, but you also need to have the opportunity to experiment and see different players and that stuff. So there's kind of that little bit of a mix, right? Of a healthy mix.
Yeah, one of the things as well to note is that the substitutes who came on changed the flow of the match in a lot of ways. Ryan Telfer came on as one of the number 8, so more box to box midfielders, and then Miguel Arria took out Troisi on the wingback position. And both of them, they were just more aggressive in their stance. They were running at defenders, drawing fouls, and they were able to again change the flow of play in a way that Halifax had really struggled to do up to that point. It's all very shortly after Ryan Telford comes on. He actually draws the foul, which leads to Callegari's free kick goal. So, in a way, you can argue that Sartini's well-timed substitutes, paid dividends and was able to help them get that win.
And I know that's really important to the fans. And of course, doing this show, doing the podcast, we want to try and connect with the fans. And so if you guys have any questions or topics you want us to discuss, we'll try and do so. But 100%, I've been in crowds before. You and I have been in the media where you hear fans saying, all right, it's time for this player to come in. It's time for this player to come in. So the subs are very important. Okay, let's set the table for this upcoming match. 1-0 on the season, clean sheet. Hard to get much better than that. Maybe one or two more goals, but hey, we'll take this start. What do you think coming into this one here, Inter-Toronto, this matchup? How do we stack up against this squad?
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting matchup in so much as Inter-Toronto hasn't played yet. They've been sitting there, licking their chops, waiting for their home opener. And of course, it's the Wanderers who are going to indulge them and walk right on into York Lions Stadium. In terms of how they line up, York United have made some really interesting additions this offseason, whether it be Benny Badabanga or former CPL star Ollie Bassett. They've got a lot of firepower and look quite different from the squad that actually eliminated the Wanderers from the playoffs last year. So I expect them, especially where they're playing at home, to come out on the front foot, to be very aggressive, to have a lot of energy. And for the Wanderers, I think it'll all be about withering maybe that first 15, 20 minutes before they can kind of get to play their match as, again, York United are rested and chomping at the bit.
Well, I can't wait to watch it. And as you mentioned, there's always that talk, advantage, disadvantage. It's a home game, but at the end of the day, one team has confidence already, off to a good start. And to use your terms, chomping at the bit, they're just waiting and ready to go. So look forward to following it. Once again, Josh Healey at JRJ Healey, publisher, HFX Football Post. Josh, thank you so much, as always. I look forward to chatting throughout the season, and it's always more fun coming off a win to chat. I can speak firsthand from covering the Halifax Mooseheads playoff series that went 4-0 the other way. It was nice to see a Halifax-based team get a win. So thanks so much, Josh, and look forward to talking next week.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Welcome.
All right, guys, that was Josh Healey. And again, we're going to be here every single Thursday. So if you are a fan of the club, if you are looking to learn more or looking to get some inside info, Josh is your guy. And of course, we'll be on scene as well, hoping to get some interviews, hoping to get some sound bites, and hopefully have a great season covering the Halifax Wanderers. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, on Facebook, Halifax Sports Talk, Instagram, Halifax Sports Talk, TikTok, same thing, and on X at HFX Sports Talk. Thank you for being here, guys. Enjoy the game this weekend, and go Wanderers.